Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson at the Butterfly Princess Academy, where curiosity takes flight and wisdom wears wings. Today we're going to be exploring a dish, and the dish that we're going to be exploring today is Herby baked fish with green olives. So here goes. Herby baked fish with green olives, a culinary symphony of history, culture and sensation. Introduction. Herby baked fish with green olives stands as a testament to the harmonious marriage of simplicity and sophistication. Sophistication in Mediterranean cuisine. This dish, characterised by its tender white fish, aromatic herbs and briny olives, transcends mere substance to embody cultural heritage, scientific integrity and sensory delight. Rooted in ancient traditions yet adaptable to modern palates, it serves as a centrepiece for both humble family dinners and grand celebrations. This lesson explores the dish's rich history, cultural significance, scientific underpinnings and multi-sensory appeal, offering a comprehensive understanding of its enduring legacy. History. The origins of Herby baked fish trace back to the coastal regions of the Mediterranean, where fishing communities relied on the sea's bounty and foraged herbs to create nourishing meals. Historical records from ancient Greece and Rome mention fish baked with olive oil, wild thyme and preserved olives. Ingredients abundant in the sun-drenched landscapes. The Phoenicians, renowned traders, likely dismantled the use of green olives and herbs across the Mediterranean, embedding those flavours into local cuisine. By the Middle Ages, the dish had become a staple in southern Europe, particularly in Italy and Provence, where mosaic gardens cultivated herbs like rosemary and oregano for both culinary and medicinal purposes. A real story about the dish. So, in a quaint Sicilian village, Nonna Maria recounts how her grandmother prepared the dish using fish caught at dawn, olives brained in terracotta jars, and herbs from the family garden. During World War II, when resources were scarce, the recipe evolved to include whatever fish was available, often mackerel or sardines, and foraged wild greens. Maria's version, now a cherished family heirloom, uses sea bass and incorporates capers for added zest, a testament to the dish's adaptability through hardship. Ingredients. The dish's core ingredients reflect its Mediterranean ethos. So we've got fish, firm with a fish like cod, halibut or sea bass, between 1.5 to 2 pounds. Herbs, fresh parsley, thyme, rosemary, oregano and rosemary, 1/2 cup chopped. Green olives, pitted in half green 1 cup. Aromatic garlic cloves, between 45 garlic cloves, lemon zest and juice. Liquid base, extra virgin olive oil, a quarter cup with white wine. That's an optional ingredient. The white wine is an optional ingredient. Accents, capers, 2 teaspoons. Cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes is also an optional ingredient. Sea salt and black pepper. Cultural significance. In Mediterranean cultures, this dish symbolises hospitality and resourcefulness. It is often served during Lent, aligning with Christian traditions of abstaining from meat, and Jewish Passover Seders where olive oil poached fish represents renewal. In Greece, it graces tables during Easter, while in Morocco, it is paired with couscous during Ramadan. The dish also underscores the Mediterranean diet principles, prioritising fresh produce, healthy fats, and communal dining. The flavour profile is a balanced interplay of savoury from the fish and olives, bright lemon's acidity cuts through richness, earthy herbs and depth, while garlic provides pungency. Briny, olives and capers contribute to its saline tang. Textures. Textural contrasts define the dish. The fish's flaky tanginess contrasts with the olive's firmness, while a golden herb crust adds crunch. Baking melds these elements, creating a cohesive yet varied mouthful. Variations, regional adaptations. In the region of Provence, they add tomatoes and herbs. Greece, they incorporate feta and Kalamata olives. North American adaptations feature terracing preserved lemons. Modern gluten-free adaptations, because there is a lot of meals now that adapt to various dietary needs and requirements. So, we have modern gluten-free breadcrumbs or vegan fish substitutes. Sensory experience. Touch. The crisp herb crust yields the moist fish. Olives offer a satisfying chew. Taste. A symphony of salty, tangy and herbal notes. Smell. Aromatic herbs and caramelised garlic entice the senses. Sight. Vibrant green olives, golden brown crust and lemon wedges create visual appeal. Here, the sizzle as the dish emerges from the oven signals its readiness. So you can serve this dish with traditional accomplishments that include roasted vegetables, crusty bread, or lemon-infused couscous. Modern pairings might feature crisp salad, a saffron blanc, or otherwise. These complement the dish's acidity. Festivals. In Valencia, Spain, the dish serves in the skies in the Festa de San Joe, celebrating summer solstice with beachside feast. In southern Italy, it is central to Christmas Eve, where 7 fish dishes honour the 7 sacraments. Science. Mary reaction. Baking at 375 Fahrenheit, 190 degrees in the oven creates a flavourful crust through amino acids, sugar reactions. Emulsification. Olive oil and lemon juice form a stable emulsion, enhancing sauce consistency. brain olive oil, olives, lactic acid, formation, lowest pH, preserving them and adding tang, nutrition, omega-3 fatty acids from fish support cardiovascular health, so that it supports the health of the heart, while herbs offer antioxidants and rhomboxamic acids. Dinner party scenario. So if you were serving, so 1 minute. So if you were serving the dish of Herby baked fish with green olives at a dinner party. 1 minute. Sorry, 1 minute. I've lost my page now. So. Yeah, 1 minute. Bear with me. Yeah. So if you decided to serve the dish of Herby baked fish with green olives at a dinner party scenario, imagine and picture this scenario, and this might inspire you to host your own dinner party. So here goes. Imagine a candlelit terrace overlooking the Aegean Sea. The host presents the dish, Herby baked fish with green olives. Its aroma mingling with sea air. Guests marvel at the crisp herb flat sea bass nestled among olives and cherry tomatoes. As they dine, conversation turns to the recipe's history, a great-grandmother's secret passed through generations. The fish, tender and succulent, pairs with citrusy Sauvignon Blanc, while laughter and clinking glasses underscores the meal's communal spirit. Conclusion. Herby baked fish with green olives is more than a meal. It is a narrative of resilience, a celebration of terroir, and a bridge between past and present. Its ability to adapt across cultures and eras while retaining its essence speaks to the universality of food as a cultural artifact. As science continues to unravel its health benefits and chefs reimagine its form, the dish remains a timeless emblem of Mediterranean life, a reminder that simplicity, when rooted in tradition and care, can achieve profound beauty. So that is the part about the dish. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about the detailed analysis of this dish that include historical and cultural perspectives. Ancient roots and trade networks. The lesson situates the dish within the Mediterranean's ancient maritime cultures, linking it to Greek, Roman, and Phoenician practices. This aligns with historical evidence as fish is a dietary staple in coastal communities preserved via salting or olive oil. The Phoenicians' role in spreading olives and herbs via trade routes is plausible, as they were known for dismantling agricultural goods like olive cultivation techniques across the Mediterranean. And I'm going to address this some other areas in a moment. Medieval and early modern adaptations. The mention of mosaic herb gardens in medieval Europe highlights how religious institutions preserved culinary knowledge. Herbs like rosemary and thyme were indeed cultivated for both medicinal and culinary uses, as seen in Hildegard von Bingem's writings on their healing properties. The Sicilian anecdote about World War II era adaptability reflects broader historical trends, resource scrutiny, scarcity during wars often led to culinary interventions such as substituting expensive ingredients, for example using mackerel, which is a type of fish, instead of pricier sea bass. The dish's endurance across millennia underscores its cultural continuity. The dish's endurance across millennia underscores its role as a culinary artifact. Preserving techniques, for example, baking in clay ovens, and ingredients, olives, carps, and capers that have defined Mediterranean cuisine for centuries. The lesson effectively ties this continuity to the region's geography and climate, which favour olive groves and herbs cultivations. Cultural significance, regional and seasonal rituals. The dish's association with Lent, Passover, and Ramadan illustrates how food rituals transcend religious boundaries. For example, in Christian Lent, fish replaces meat as a symbol of penance, aligning with Vatican dietary laws. At Jewish Passover, olive oil poached fish, historically common in sporadic communities, symbolises renewal of the Exodus narrative. The Exodus, as you know, tells the story of Moses and the Israelites' enslavement and freeing from Egyptian slavery. Now, the book of Exodus is, of course, one of the 5 books of Moses, one of the five books of Moses, the Pentateuch, and it can be found in the Old Testament of the Bible. In Morocco, pairing this dish with couscous during Ramadan reflects macabre traditions or communal iftar meals. Right. Symbolism of ingredients. Olives, a quintessential Mediterranean symbol of peace and prosperity. Their inclusion ties the dish to regional identity. The lesson notes that lactic acid fermentation processes of preservation method dating to antiquity, which allowed coastal communities to store food for lean seasons. Herbs. Herbs like oregano and rosemary are framed as both practical, making fish odours pre-refrigeration, and symbolic. Rosemary for remembrance in Greek folklore. Communal and festive context. The Festa de San Joan in Valencia and Christmas Eve, La Vigilia in Italy, implies how the dishes anchors celebrations. In Valencia, the summer solstice feast aligns with pre-Christian fire and sea rituals, whilst Italy's Feast of the Seven Fishes merges Catholic sacraments with seafood abundance. These examples highlight the dish's role in reinforcing community bonds and seasonal cycles. regional variations as cultural markers. But the less in contrast, tomatoes, herbs, Greek feta, and olives in native and North African harassing preserved lemons adaptations. These variations reflect colonial and trade influences. Tomatoes introduced to Europe post 1492 show how New World ingredients were absorbed into older recipes. Local terrier. North African chili paste and preserved lemons speak to the spice trade and preservation needs in arid climates. Modern interpretation. Vegan and gluten-free versions reflect contemporary dietary trends, illustrating how the dish remains relevant. Right, and now I'm going to the lesson successfully frames Herby baked fish with green olives as a mechanism of Mediterranean history and culture. Its layered analysis of ingredients, rituals, and adaptability reveals how food echoes identity, survival, and innovation. Right, so I'm going to address these gaps so that didn't really expand, so I'm going to expand. Class dynamics, accessibility, and ingredient privilege. The dish's ingredients historically reflected social economic divides. Fish, including sea bass and halibut, were often luxury items in pre-modern Europe, accessible primarily to coastal elites or wealthy merchants. For example, in medieval Mediterranean trade records, fresh sea bass fetched higher prices than small oily fish like sardines or anchovies, which were staples of working class communities. Inland populations relied on preserved fish, for example, salted cod, as noted in 14th century Catalan customs logs. Olives and olive oil. Olive cultivation required land and labour, making olive oil a marker of wealth in non-Mediterranean regions. Roman edicts on maximum prices from 301 CE regulated olive oil costs, hinting at its value. However, in olive-growing regions like southern Italy or Greece, even peasants could access olives through communal presses, as documented in Renaissance Tuscan estate records. Adaptability. During World War II, Sicilian families substituted expensive sea bass with mackerel or foraged herbs, as seen in oral histories from this resilience highlights how class-shaped ingredients access through crises often temporarily blurred these lines. Gender roles and labour. Women and marginalised groups were central to the dish's traditions. Recipe preservation. Women as culinary custodians transmitted recipes orally across generations. The Sicilian Nonna's story mirrors findings in Carol Field's In Nonna's Kitchen, which documents matrimonial recipe stewardship in Italy. Olive harvesting in ancient Rome, olive picking was relegated to enslaved labourers. By the 19th century, southern Italian landless workers, often women and children, harvest olives for for Marjorie Ages is noted in sociologist 1876 study of Sicilian peasants. Domestic labour, cleaning fish and bringing olives fell to women and Carol Cotley's work on Sardinian gender roles. Men typically handled fishing while women managed preservation and herb gardens. Historical sourcing and evidence, strengthening claims with primary sources. Phoenician trade archaeology, evidence such as olive pits found in 9th century BC, Phoenician shipwrecks off Malta per Journal of Malta, Mediterranean archaeology supports their role in spreading olive cultivation. Herodotus also noted the Asian olive oil trade with Egypt histories of 440 BCE. Mosaic herb use. The 12th century herb manuscript by Winifred Scott details herb gardens at Ringsham Abbey, including rosemary and thyme for seasoning fish dishes. Similarly, the capture of 800 CE mandated Mosaic herb cultivation. Ancient recipes and includes a baked fish dish with fish sauce and herbs, mirroring the essay's description. Herby baked fish with green olive embodies intersections of class, gender, and labour. Elite versus commoner, luxury ingredients like sea bass and imported olives contrasted with resourcefulness, substitutions by lower classes reflecting economic hierarchies. Women's invisible labour. From harvest to heath, women sustained the dish's legacy despite systematic marginalisation. Trade and power. Phoenician and Mosaic network shaped ingredient dimensions underpinned by exploitive labour systems. By arching these themes in primary sources and social economic contrast, the dish emerges not just as a culinary icon, but as a lens to Mediterranean's history complexities. Here are critical questions. Right, so I'll come up with some questions about this dish and then I will provide answers. So question 1. How did the Phoenician trade network shape not only the spread of ingredients like olives and herbs, but also the cultural identity of Mediterranean cuisine? Question 2. In what ways did religious practices, for example, Lent and Passover, elevate the dish from a simple meal to a symbol of communal or spiritual significance? 3. How might the dish's World War II era adaptation in Sicily reflect broader patterns of culinary resilience during times of scarcity across cultures? If a sea bass was historically a luxury ingredient, how did class divisions influence regional variations of the dish? For example, coastal elites versus inland peasants using preserved fish. 5. How did enslaved or marginalised labour systems, for example, Roman enslaved harvesters, underpin the availability of humble ingredients like olives and herbs? 6. What might modern food movements, for example, farm to table, recognise the dish while overlooking its historical ties to exploitative labour practices? How have women's roles as keepers of recipes preserved culinary traditions while similar relegating their contribution to the domestic sphere? In contemporary kitchens, does the globalisation of this dish, for example vegan adaptations, challenge or reinforce traditional gender roles in its preparation? How does the malolactic reaction's role in creating the herb crust mirror ancient preservation techniques, for example, drying herbs or fermenting olives? Could the dish's emphasis on contrasting textures, like flaky fish versus binary olives, reflect a universal human preference for sensory complexity in food? Do gluten-free or vegan reinterpretations of the dish honour its cultural roots, or do they risk cultural apprehension by divorcing it from its historical context? How might climate change, for example, declining olives yield overfishing, threaten the future of this dish as a Mediterranean culinary example? In an era of industrial food production, can this dish's emphasis on seasonal local ingredients inspire sustainable culinary practices? Why has the dish become a symbol of Mediterranean identity despite its regional variations? For example, Greek feta versus Moroccan harissa. How does the dish's association with festivals like Valencia's Festa de Sant Joan reinforce connections between food, land, and collective memory? So here are the questions. Question 1. The Phoenicians, master traders of the ancient Mediterranean, dismantled olives, herbs, and preservation techniques across coastal regions. By establishing trade colonies, for example Carthage, they integrated these ingredients into local diets, fostering a pan-Mediterranean culinary identity rooted in olive oil, fish, and aromatic herbs. This exchange is evidenced by olive pits found in 9th century BCE Venetian shipwrecks and Herodotus' accounts of their trade with Egypt. Their network laid the groundwork for a shared cuisine that transcended political boundaries. Question 2, answer. During Lent, the dish's fish-based recipe aligned with Christian abstinence from meat, symbolising piety. For Jewish Passover, olive oil poached fish represented renewal, and the Exodus promises of liberation. In Ramadan, its pairing with couscous in Morocco underscores communal Iftar meals. These rituals have elevated the dish from subsistence to spiritual symbolism, intertwining faith with culinary traditions. Question 3, answer. Sicilian families during World War II substituted scarce sea bass with mackerel and foraged herbs, mirroring global patterns of driven interventions, e.g., for example, Soviet losing with scraps. Oral historians from Italy's Archivo Disinterest National reveal how such adaptations preserve cultural identity and hardship, showcasing food's role as a tool of resilience. 4. Coastal elites access fresh sea bass and premium olives, while inland peasants relied on salted cod and wild greens. This divide is documented in medieval Catalan trade logs, where fresh food commanded higher prices. Regional variations, for example, provincial tomatoes versus Greek feta, thus reflect social economic access to ingredients. 5. Roman enslaved labourers harvest olives, as noted in Camille's later Sicilian landless workers toiled for minimal wages, per 19th century sociologist Chernow. These exploitative systems ensured olives and herbs remained staples, embedding social inequality into the dish's history. 6. Farm-to-table trends romanticises the dish's local ingredients while ignoring historical labour exploitation. For example, olive oil's rustic appeal often overshadows its ties to enslaved or underpaid harvesters, illustrating a disconnect between culinary nostalgia and ethnical reckoning. Gen 7. Women preserved recipes orally, as seen in Carol Field's In Nonna's Kitchen. Their labour cleaning fish, braining olives was domestically confined, relegating their contribution to unpaid, invisible work despite sustaining culinary heritage. 8. Vegan adaptations often prepared in commercial kitchens challenge traditional gender roles by moving the dish beyond domestic spheres. However, women still dominate home cooking globally, suggesting lingering gender divides. 9. The mirage reaction browning at 337 degrees Fahrenheit enhances flavour via aroma acid sugar interactions, akin to ancient sun drying of herbs or lactose formations of olives. Both methods prioritise longevity in taste, bridging ancient and modern culinary science. 10. The interplay of flaky fish, crunchy crust and chewy olives align with cross-cultural perseverance for textural diversity is noted in food psychologist Charles Spencer's study on multisensory. The interplay of flaky fish, crunchy crust and chewy olives aligns with cross-cultural perseverance for textual diversity. As noted in food psychologist Charles Spencer's studies on multisensory eating experiences. Right. Well, question 11. While these adaptations democratise access, they risk diluting cultural authority by omitting foundational elements, for example, olive oil symbolism, yet they also honour the dish's adaptive spirit, reflecting its historical evolution. 12. Rising temperatures threaten olive oil yields. For example, the 2022 drought in Spain, while overfishing endangers sea bass stocks. Such challenges risk eroding the dish's traditional farm, necessitating sustainable agriculture and drought-resistant crops. 13. The dish's resilience on seasonal regional ingredient models sustainability against industrial food systems. For instance, Mediterranean cooperatives now prioritise heritage olive varieties in small-scale fisheries to combat ecological decline. 14. Shared elements: olive oil, olives, herbs, fish unify the dish across Greece, Morocco and Provence, symbolising a collective culinary heritage. Its regional adaptation celebrates local terroir while affirming a broader Mediterranean identity. 15. Valencia's Festa de San Joan ties the dish to summer solstice rituals, where beachside feasts honour the sea's bounty. Such festivals reinforce the interdependence of cuisine, geography, and collective memory among the dish in cultural landscapes. So now I've come up with some rhetorical questions that will provoke thought and reflection, and then I will provide some insights. Question 1. If a dish can traverse millennia, surviving wars and continuity, What does its enduring say about humanity's relationship with food as both sustenance and memory? 2. When we savour the primary tang of olives and the crispness of herbs, are we tasting flavours or the silent labour of generations, harvest cooks, mothers, whose hands shapes its legacy? Can a recipe rooted in exploitation enslaved olive pickers underpinned but ever truly be called humble, or does its simplicity mask a history of inequality? 4. What is lost when we adapt traditions for modern palates, for vegan substitutes, gluten-free crust, if the dish becomes untethered from the land that and people that birthed it? 5. How does a baked fish wrapped in aromas of rosemary and thyme transcend its ingredients to become a symbol of Mediterranean identity, even as burgers of politics and burgers, even as burgers and politics divide the region? 6. If climate change silences the sizzle of this dish in future kitchens, vanishing fish stocks, withering olive groves, what fragment of culture vanishes with it? Can we honour the women who preserved the recipe through centuries of unpaid labour without reminiscing the gendered burdens of culinary traditions? Is the true miracle of the dish found not in its flavours, but in its ability to bridge sacred and mundane, Lent's penance, a family's laughter, a solstice festival? What does it mean that a meal born of necessity, wartime substitution, peasants' integrity now graces the table of fine dining, its origins polished into nostalgia? When we eat the fish, are we consuming a culture or merely borrowing its aesthetics, leaving the weight of its history on the plate? So, insights. Question 1. If a dish can traverse millennia, surviving wars and right, so question 1, insight. Food is more than nourishment, it is a living archive. The survival of this dish reflects humanity's instinct to preserve identity and continuity through culinary tradition. In times of upheaval, recipes became acts of resistance, ensuring cultural memory outlives empires and ideologies. A meal then is a covenant between generations, a promise to carry forward what matters most. Question 2, insight. Every bite is a privilege of labour. The olive saltiness carries the sweat of ancient Phoenician traders, the concealed hands of Sicilian bronicas, and the quiet soul of mothers who kept the recipes alive. To eat this dish is to ingest history, not as abstraction, but as the cumulative effort of unseen lives. Can we truly savour it without honouring their invisible contribution? Question 3, insight. The dish's humility is a paradox. Its ingredients, olives, herbs, fish, are modest, yet their cultivation relied on systems of oppression. To romanticise its simplicity risks in raising the suffering embedded in its origins. True humanity would require acknowledging this duality, celebrating resilience while reckoning with the violence that made such resilience necessary. Question 4, insight. Innovation risks serving food from its soul. A vegan version might democratically access but divorcing the dish from olive groves and fishing villages strips it of its terrier. The soil, sea and stories that define it. Yet adaptation is also survival. The question becomes, how do we evolve without erasing? Perhaps the answer lies in honouring roots while making space for new narratives. Question 5, insights. The Mediterranean is a mosaic of conflicts, but its cuisine speaks a universal language. Shared ingredients, olives, fish, herbs, bind desperate cultures to a common landscape. This dish distills that unity, a plate where Greek, Arab and Italian influences coexist. It suggests that identity is not fixed by borders but forged by the rhythms of land and sea. Question 6, insights. The loss would be extinctional. Olive trees, some centuries old, are archives of ecological and cultural knowledge. Their decline would sever a living link to ancient practices. The dish's disappearance would not just erase a recipe, but unravel a thread in the Mediterranean's cultural tapestry. What replaces it? A world where convenience supplements connection and flavour is divorced from place. Question 7, insights. To honour these women requires confronting uncomfortable truths. Their labour sustained cultures but often confined them to domestic roles. Celebration without critique. The myth of the selfishness, true homage would evolve, redistributing labour, crediting their contribution and ensuring future generations inherit both their recipes and freedom to redefine it. Question 8, insight. Yes, food's power lies in its duality. It is ordinary and transcendent, realistic. A family meal becomes a sacrament. A Lent restriction transforms into abundance. The dish's miracle is the capacity to hold contradictions, to be both a humble supper and a vessel for the divine. Question 9, insights. It reveals how privilege sanitizes struggles. The dish's journey from survival food to gourmet status mirrors the commodification of rustic aesthetics. Yet this gentrification risks erasing its origins in resilience. To eat it in a Michelin-starred setting is to consume a cultured myth, a curated myth, one that often obscures the hunger and integrity that buried it. Question 10, insight. The line between appreciation and appropriation is thin. To eat with intention, learning its history, respecting its roots, is to engage in cultural dialogue. To treat it as a trendy experience is abstraction. The weight of history remains on the plate. Whether we carry it forward or discard it depends on how we choose to taste. Closing thoughts. Herby baked fish with green olives is more than a culinary creation. It is a testament to humanity's capacity to weave survival, creativity and meaning into the fabric of daily life. From ancient Phoenician trade routes to modern dinners, tables the dish carries whispers of resilience, the labour of forgotten hands, the integrity of scrutiny, of scarcity, and the quiet power of shared meals. Its scoring reminds us that food is never merely sustenance. It is a living dialogue between past and present, privilege and sacrifice, memory and intervention. As we confront today's challenges, climate crisis, cultural erosion, inequality, This dish challenges us to ask, how will we steward recipes, ingredients and stories entrusted to us? Will we honour the olive groves and fishing waters that sustain them? Will we credit the hands that harvest, cooks and preserve? Will we adapt without forgetting? And inspirational quotes to carry forward and think about. So, 1. Food is the first art. It is the oldest way we have to communicate love, history and hope. Claudia Rogan, and that is a quote from Claudia Rogan, who is a culinary historian. 2. A recipe is a story that ends with a good meal. That quote is from someone called Pat Conroy. 3. The olive tree is surely the richest gift of heaven. That is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. 4. What we eat is never neutral. It is an act of participation in both the soil and the soul of people. That quote is from someone called Robin Wall Kilmeyer. To cook is to pray, to eat is to inherit the world, and that quotation is from Rummy. May we approach every meal not just with appetite, but with reverence for the land, the labour and the legacy on our plate. Let the dish inspire us to savour, deeply question, but boldly, and pass forward the stories that nourish both body and spirit. Bon appetit and onward. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that now concludes today's lesson, where we've been exploring the dish Herby baked fish with green olives. I would like to finish by taking this opportunity and to say to you, thank you for joining me today at the Butterfly Princess Academy, where curiosity takes flight and wisdom wears wings. And I very much hope you can join me for future lessons at the Butterfly Princess Academy in the very near future. Don't forget, the Butterfly Princess Academy records and posts lessons Monday to Friday on the Butterfly Princess Academy's Facebook page and YouTube channels. And it's also you can also see what's coming up for future lessons of the Butterfly Princess Academy on the Butterfly Princess Academy Instagram page. But until next time, bye for now, and I'll see you again very soon. Oh, and don't forget the monthly editions of the Butterfly Princess Academy, where I take you on a virtual tour of a country that is the second Friday of the month. We do the Butterfly Princess Bistro, that's on the first Friday of the month. And we also do the Butterfly Princess Academy Book Club. That's on the second Sunday, the last Sunday of the month, and where we explore butterflies at the Butterfly Princess Academy. That is on the first Sunday of each month. But until next time, take care. Bye bye for now, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye. Take care.